In the late 1980s, a Russian entomologist named Viktor Grebennikov made an extraordinary claim. He had discovered an anti-gravity effect hidden in the microscopic structure of insect wings. According to him, these natural patterns created a gravity shield, allowing objects placed above them to hover. He even built a levitating platform powered by this discovery, allegedly soaring across the Siberian countryside at high speeds. Despite his detailed sketches, personal testimonies, and insistence that he had built a functional flying machine, mainstream science still dismissed his work, calling it a fraud. But that's what they said about Tesla, and they were proven wrong. Was he a misunderstood genius, or were his findings deliberately ignored so that the rich can stay rich? Let's start with a little backstory that is very important to the story. As a whole, Grebennikov was a smart, inquisitive young man who grew to be among the first of a fresh, educated generation. As a result, he became a scientist, more specifically an entomologist, which deals with the study of insects. He was so successful in his field that he ended up discovering new species of insects that had never been found. He preferred his walks with nature, far from the conventional stuffy offices and dense volumes normally connected with scientists. And it was through this life of discoveries that he made another important discovery. One evening in the early 1980s, Grebennikov was walking the large steppe alone, and after a busy day, decided to lie down on the grass. After a few seconds, not more than a minute at most, Grebennikov felt something disturbing, an uncomfortable sensation he couldn't explain, coming from the ground. He was fine just minutes ago, with no signs of sickness, but right now, as he placed his head on a handmade cushion, he was getting headaches, ringing ears, and a metallic taste in his mouth. He was puzzled, so he sat up, and while trying to figure out what the heck was going on, he came to see that where he was lying down was on top of an underground beehive. He also noticed that whenever he was close to this said beehive, he would get a strong sensation that was kind of repelling him. He didn't understand what was happening, so he did what any scientist would do: investigate it further. 4 more times under different weather and different times of the day, he went back to the same area and discovered the same results every time. He would feel nothing 5 meters from the beehive's border, but as soon as he came really close to it, he would feel very uncomfortable. This phenomenon weighed on his mind, but for some reason he didn't study it further, despite thinking about it for years. As fate would have it, later in the future, he happened to be in another area where he saw another beehive, but this one had just died recently. That is, it is disintegrated under the influence of erosion and the passage of time. Grebennikov gathered some portions of the honeycomb along with the dead bees while investigating, and then went back to his office. When he got to his office, he noticed something. You see, he mistakenly put his hand over the honeycomb and instinctively removed it, like how you do when your hand is over something hot. And that was because he felt a heat emanating from the honeycomb when he touched it. And he also got a sort of thermal sensation that caused him lightheadedness. The same feeling he had those years ago when he was resting on top of a beehive. To be certain, it wasn't just him feeling this way. He got others to try it by putting their hands over it or getting closer to the honeycomb, and all of them described the same feeling of heat, sometimes a cold breeze, experiencing numbness in their fingers, and also feeling like their hand was being pushed around. To make it stranger, no conventional scientific instrument could determine the origin of this. In Grebennikov's own words, thermometers or ultrasound detectors, magnetometers, and electrometers did not respond to them in the slightest. He also tried to cover it with paper and even with a thick metal sheet, but the sensation always passed through and he could feel the heat. Every mechanical and electronic clock was not working correctly. Unknown to him, what Grebennikov didn't know was that by accident, by just lying on that ground that day, and by bringing this dead beehive home, he had accidentally discovered or rediscovered the cavity structural effect, CSE. To put it simply in layman's terms, CSE is kind of like a force field around cavernous, honeycomb-like structures. This discovery also will lead to him working with another important aspect of physics known as cavity resonance. But I am ahead of myself. Thinking of this as a significant and maybe revolutionary discovery, Grebennikov wrote about his results and published them. Weirdly enough, his article about the discovery of CSE was either overlooked or ignored in the mainstream scientific community. Without getting much from anyone, Grebennikov was then left to carry on the effort personally, and that's when it all changed. Now, there is a reason I told you all this story first, like a prequel, and that's because it will help you see things from Grebennikov's perspective, and also see how the inception of his anti-gravity hypothesis or invention was rooted in nature, biology, and science. Under a microscope, Grebennikov was studying insect chitin shells in 1988 when he observed what he termed an unusually rhythmic, extremely ordered, incomparable honeycomb, solid, multi-dimensional composition, which looked as if it was pressed by some complicated, automatic machine. Something amazing happened as he did more research. Grebennikov was trying to put the two wings on top of each other. That is, one wing on the table and another on it. The wings had the same unique cell structure on their underside. As he tried to do this, the wing on his tweezers got suspended in the air for a few seconds, and then turned a few degrees clockwise and swung before falling on the desk. Every time he tried to do this, it would be like there was something pushing it out, making it impossible to touch. That was his video, by the way. If you played with magnets as a kid, you would understand what I mean. It was like trying to separate magnets, but at the same time, bringing them together to find that sweet spot where they are not too far apart, but close enough to create some sort of force field for you to play with. I might be bad at describing what I mean, but you get the gist. That was how it was for Grebennikov. Then not only that, he also discovered that nothing could stay on top of the wings. He brought a multi-layered chitin block and set it on it, but the block would be shoved aside. It was frustrating, but little by little, he started getting a grasp of it, until one day, he got his eureka moment. Attaching the tack atop the block, he saw amazing, impossible things. Apparently, the tack would hover for a while, and then vanish from view for a few fleeting seconds. This amazing find led Grebennikov to ponder about some things. Based on the size of their wings and the pace of their wing beat, science proposed some bugs should be too enormous to fly, like the Titan beetles or the Hercules beetles, but they do, making Grebennikov wonder if these amazing insects found a way to defy gravity. Grebennikov thought that these honeycombs produce some type of anti-gravity field that lets the insects violate physics and fly, probably using the cavity structural effect. If this is true, that would mean some bugs levitated rather than fly. After becoming enchanted by the way insect wings defy gravity, Grebennikov set out to create his own anti-gravity platform and prove his theory right. He insisted that the resonant effects of the insect wing cavities were responsible for the platform's levitation and rapid movement. With this hypothesis in mind, he set out to create a tool that could defy gravity. And spoiler alert, he did. Before I could make an informed decision about Grebennikov's invention, I had to do a research detour on anti-gravity to see if it was even possible to begin with. Now, I did try, but man, it was hard to grasp what people were saying about it. I was reading in English, but the words looked like Sanskrit to me. Apparently, the gravity we know, or most people like me know, is just one aspect of gravity. There are other ways or perspectives of looking at gravity that we still don't understand yet. It was crazy. If you are a physicist or scientist watching this video, please, you can explain it better than I in the comments section. But to simply put it, it's the hypothetical phenomenon of counteracting gravity, the force that attracts a body towards the center of the Earth or towards any other physical body having mass. Anti-gravity has been discussed since the 17th century, when Isaac Newton initially proposed the idea as he developed his equations of motion and gravitation. Ever since, studies from both the mainstream and the fringe have focused on trying to understand it better so we can use it for the betterment of humanity. While NASA and other mainstream researchers have dabbled in the concept of manipulating gravity for propulsion purposes, their work has been mostly theoretical thus far. While on the fringes, anti-gravity research has been pursued by those willing to challenge conventional scientific wisdom, like Grebennikov. With his newfound knowledge, he created an anti-gravity vehicle, or machine, by fastening hundreds, if not thousands of chitin shells to the bottom of a basic wooden platform, and was said to be able to move at incredible speeds, even as fast as 1,000 km/h, and could go as high as 300 meters from the ground. And despite how fast he was going, and how high, he was still safe on top of that wooden platform. According to him, it was as if he was immersed in a bubble or force field where he felt no effects of such speed or height. no inertia qualities or dynamic pressure, despite the amazing speeds. Plus, the platform was invisible from below while in flight, looking just like a luminous sphere or cloud in the heavens, which according to him could explain why no one saw him. He operated this vehicle by using two handles connected to the base by one pole. Grebennikov claimed that these structures were more than just physical characteristics. They were fundamental to a powerful phenomena that he called cavity resonance. This anti-gravity platform, supposedly constructed by Grebennikov, was a labyrinth of these hollow constructions laid out in a precise pattern. This invention, rather than being the result of intricate engineering or cutting-edge technology, like the space program, was born out of a modest, unassuming study of nature. Grebennikov thought these hollow structures were nature's way of telling us how to create anti-gravity. All we had to do was find them and figure it out. And it turns out that he was right. So right that during my research, I stumbled upon the ancient Egyptians' reverence for insects. The ancient Egyptians placed a high spiritual value on insects, especially the scarab beetle, because they believed that its life cycle, which involves emerging from a dung ball, symbolized rebirth, resurrection, and the daily renewal of the sun. The beetle was associated with the sun god Khepri, and so it was frequently depicted in amulets and tomb art. The bee also had a significant symbolic meaning in ancient Egyptian society, particularly in relation to royal titles. In such, the first pharaoh of Egypt was called the beekeeper, a title that was later given to every pharaoh after him, and it turns out that several talented geniuses invented or worked on anti-gravity machines. Although, full disclosure, they worked on it following different scientific principles, which was what I was talking about when I mentioned the different perspectives of gravity. So Grebennikov had some points. Even his cavity structural effects or resonance is rooted in science. Cavity resonance is a phenomenon where a cavity, such as an open box or a hollow sphere, can amplify waves at specific frequencies. This happens when the frequency of the wave matches the natural frequency of the cavity, causing the wave to resonate and increase in amplitude. There are many real-world technological uses for cavity resonance. This principle is applied in the field of telecommunications, where devices such as cell phones and radios utilize cavity resonators to enhance desired frequencies while filtering out unwanted ones. And this relates to anti-gravity in the sense that insects with specific wing cavities may be able to generate a frequency that matches certain frequencies in nature, which helps create a sort of anti-gravity effect for the insects, enabling them to fly. Before, I would have laughed at this explanation, but after seeing a couple of beavers come together to build a dam in Czech Republic that is better than the proposed €1 million dam the government wanted to build, and to build that with just sticks, then trust me, we still have a lot to learn about wildlife. As with all reputable scientists who stumble upon a discovery, they publish it for their peers to review. Now, if that was the case, this video might have ended right now, and I would have called it a day with my findings, probably saying he was mentally disturbed or he was a liar. But that isn't the case, because just as Grebennikov was excited to share his findings, he was frustrated out of it, until he eventually stopped. You see, given such a possibly revolutionary creation, Grebennikov felt that his colleague, or any scientist for that matter, should look at his discovery. After all, an advancement in science is an advancement for all humankind. Maybe if someone with enough influence and resources sees this and works on it, it could change the world in a positive way. He registered for a patent, and that's when his trouble began, as his patent application was turned down. Then in 1992, the Russian newspaper Molodost Siberia showed the very first photos of Grebennikov flying on his platform as they published the review of his book, My World. This is the photo that caused quite a stir, showing the aerial capabilities of this platform. This story was republished by another magazine, and in this one, the world saw a sneak peek and more details of his book, where he promised to detail everything he came across in his research with pictures. According to the magazine article, the book will cover the platform's ideas, capabilities, and equipment in detail. It will span 500 pages and feature 400 colour photographs. Everyone was anticipating the release of his book, but when it was released, the book only had 300 pages and numerous irrelevant images of butterflies. His critics called him a fraud for not showing images. However, it was later discovered that proofreaders, editors, and probably the Russian authorities forbade Grebennikov from disclosing whatever he found during his research. So whatever was in his released book was a very watered-down version of his research. At the same time, Grebennikov was being called out by critics, and it didn't help matters that he had no footage to show his claim, but then again, if he had, would they have allowed him to use it? And with that, Grebennikov's invention that had its origin rooted in nature, biology, and science was now tagged as a hoax and probably forgotten, only mentioned in channels like this. Some people even believed that the government seized his research and perfected it, and the UFO we see today could be the government's perfect version of Viktor's research. Others say it is not, but his theory could explain how UFOs defy gravity, because while we are looking at defying gravity, with propulsion and the rest, the aliens are doing it by exploiting what is already on Earth, just like the insects. Plus, history, both recent and archaic, is filled with the deaths and coverings of innovators that challenged the normalcy of their time. Those who refused to shut up were killed. His story kind of reminded me of Galileo Galilei. Galileo's theories were also frowned upon by the scientific community of that time, which ironically was the church. But semantics aside, they thought he was drastically wrong with his theory. But now we know that he was right all along. And I can't help but think it could be the same because, again, he didn't necessarily invent anything. He just used or exploited what was already present in nature. His last notes, before his death in 2001, show that he also believed in this. There is no mysticism. The thing is simply that we, humans, still know little of the universe which, as we see, not always accepts our all too human rules, assumptions, and orders. You can rewind to hear it again, this time slowly, because it says a lot of truth. Of course, for a lot of people hearing this story now and then, the obvious reason for not believing is that there is no proof of anything he is saying. We don't have any image or video of him in the air, and when asked about it, he said the cavernous structure effect caused his camera to malfunction during flights. As a result, he couldn't take any pictures. Not only that, his idea lacked the rigorous scientific evidence and transparency that are cornerstones of scientific discovery. And here is the thing. For his idea to even work, we need to change a lot about how we think about gravity and electricity to fit his idea of anti-gravity. Without a new theoretical framework to support these claims, they remain at odds with mainstream physics. At least if you are going to prove us wrong, then prove us wrong, like Galileo did. The lack of empirical evidence, theoretical backing, and transparency in Grebennikov's experiments has led to his work being categorized as pseudoscience. Now, insects are small enough to be affected by electrostatic charges. Insects can balloon or kite on web strands with the help of air currents and electrostatic charges. But they are not anti-gravity. Maybe he was seeing things that were not just there, and even if he was right about the insects, and let's say they do defy gravity, that could very much be their makeup structure. Just like how the tail of a lizard can regenerate if cut, but the tail of a cat doesn't. And then I found a video on YouTube, actually. It's a playlist on YouTube. Someone took the time to carry out the experiments we saw earlier, and I won't lie, he was pretty convincing. When I was writing the critic section, I thought the only criticism would be how we can't prove his theory, or even call him a madman. But I never thought I would have to call him a fraud too. Yeah, apparently Grebennikov faked the whole thing. The levitation thing done by the wings was just a wing glued to a string, which he controlled off camera. Here is the video.
Hey guys, welcome back. This will be the explanation for the Hovering Elytra. Let's take a look at the original one last time. I'll blow this up for you. Okay, what I want you to do is keep your eye on this one. Okay? And what I saw is this elytra gets dropped on top of this one. This one pushes that one out of the way and then hovers over top of it. Something else I want you to watch is pretend there's an axle running through this one. Not on that one, just this one. It sways back and forth along that axle, even right in the beginning when he's not even touching it. So that tells me something is running along that axle. Check it out. See it? When it gets bumped, it stays put. Right there, just push that one out of the way, Now it's hovering and swaying back and forth. That's how I did it. This stuff is called invisible thread, and I just happen to have some. I used it a long time ago, and it's just been sitting in my closet. There are hundreds of threads in this little strand here. You pick one, you pull it out, and it's that thin. Hope you can make that out. Anyway, it comes with wax, and you stick a little bit of wax on whatever you want to hover, and then stick the string to the wax, and there you go. Let's see if we can get that sway. Look familiar? Okay. There we go. Well, that's how I did it.
And like I said, there is a playlist showing all the tricks, so this person took their time to show how it can easily be faked. The link to the channel is in the description below. So, what do I think about all this? Well, Grebennikov was a respected member of Russian society, and even if he didn't discover anti-gravity, he did discover CSE, which was also linked to his supposed discovery of anti-gravity. And unlike most people who would say they did something but hoard it for only, quote, the right people, Grebennikov put his work out there for all to see and disprove or improve. This wasn't just a quack, he was a reputable man in his field. And here is what I think. I think he was right. At least there was a basis of truth in his hypothesis. I think by studying insects, he did discover anti-gravity that could be part of the natural essence of those insects. But here is the problem. Applying it to human biology or structure is another thing entirely, and that's when his theory starts to fall apart. Just like the analogy I gave earlier with the lizard and the cat. But that's just my 2 cents. What's yours? Do you believe him? Why? And if you don't, why? Let me know in the comments section.